Hello everyone, welcome to a new tutorial presented by the SHRVB. In this tutorial, we are going to calculate the mean in statistics without being given the frequencies. So what we are going to see, we're going to say that that when you want to calculate the mean, the first thing to put in mind is that you are to be given some variables, and those variables are going to occur certain number of times. The certain number of times that those variable occurs is named as the frequency. But here we aren't going to involve with the frequency. We are going to involve a program which is only going to take the variables that you enter into it without the frequencies. So let's say, take an example. You have a variable height which is being taken in a classroom or in an environment in a society. The height, let's say the height of 7 people is taken. If you have the height of these 7 people, what do you realize? Let's say somebody have 1.3 meters, the other one has 1.5 meters, another one has 1.5 meters, another one has 1.6 meters, another one has 1.6 meters, another one has 1.6 meters, another one has 1.7 meters. So we have variables. These are 1, 2, 3. This is 1 point. So we have 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7 variables. 7 variables. Now you see that these 7 variables are such. Now 1.1 occur only once. You see that there are 2 people having a variable, a height of 1.5. So the frequency here is 2. There are 3 people having a height of 1.6, and there's only 1 person with a height of 1.7. So the height of 7 people is given as such, and the frequencies are 2 for 1.5, 3 for 1.6, 1 for 1.7, and 1 for 1.3. So this is the frequencies. But now we are going to have a program. We are going to create a program that is going to calculate the average height without entering the number of frequencies. So let's start. Before we go into our program, we first need to know what do we mean by statistical mean. The mean is the average of all these numbers. So how do we calculate the mean? The formula for a mean is given here. So mean in bracket x bar is equals to the summation. We sum all the values from I equals to 1 from the first value to the last term. The last term is 7 in this case, or of all the value xi, and all divided by the total number of terms. Here in this case is 7. So we have this. Now we want to create a program which have this. So the first thing to put in mind is to ask the user of our program to enter the number of variables he's going to have. In this case, height, you see that this is the first height, the second height, the third height, fourth height, fifth height, sixth and seventh height. So you see that there are 7 height in this case, in this question, that you have to enter as being the total number of variables. So now we are going to ask the question to the user of our program to enter the total number of variables so as to calculate its mean. So to ask that, we are going to use a function called printf. When you use the function printf, this function printf is used to print a variable on the screen. The function printf, as we have seen in the tutorial in C, is used to print values on the screen. So let's try to visualize first what is going to do this function printf. So let's say enter the total number of variables. So we have this, enter the total number of variables. So in order to compile our code, what are you going to do? We are going to just to come on this side, because our code, this editor code blocks, is associated with the GNU compiler, as we initially said. It's associated with the GNU compiler. The compiler is what is going to convert this code I'm writing now into machine language, so that the machine can understand what I'm writing here. So in order to compile, I'll come and I press this button here. This button here is for compilation. And now when you see this one here, this box here is for debugging. It's a debugger. In this case, when you see all this, you see build debug main compiler. You see the compiler is the GNU GCC compiler. Is the one who is showing you the error with the debugger. This is a build message. You have the debugger here which is showing the error. And the error they are telling you is expected a semicolon at the end of printf. So you need to know that in C programming, when you want to do a C programming, you must always separate all the different statements in your program with a semicolon. This one wasn't separated because it's a comment, as you are going to see in the tutorial. So you can subscribe to the channel in order for you to visualize the other C tutorials, for you to have the basics in order for you to do this program for the calculation of the mean. So you have this. When I do this, I put my semicolon, I then compile. No building error, they say 0 error, 0 warning, 0 message, 0 minutes and 1 second. It's okay. So you just come here and run. This is what it shows you. Enter the total number of variable and then it stops. This is execution time. So what I'm going to do now is that I'm going to shift it 2 times from the column by the tab. So I shift it as such. I shift it as such. Now, in order to visualize the other program, I need to cancel the first. I come here again. I do it. And then I run. I see that now it's at the center. So now, what will I do? The next thing to do now is to ask when we have asked now the user of our code to enter the total number of variables. So the total number of variables, how will the total number of variables help us? We know that we are going to create a total number we are going to have the total number of variables in order to create an array where we are going to store all the values that the user is going to place into our program. So now, how do we take the value from the user? So in C programming, in order to take the value from the user, we use scanf. Now we know that they enter the total number of variables. The variable must be of the, when we enter the number of variables, the n terms 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7 are integer values. So we are going to store it in an integer portion with a percentage d. We put comma and then we put in the address of the variable we want to store in. So we have the variable here, but we didn't declare this variable. We need to declare this variable again at the top here. So now let's declare the variable up here. So what do you have? So we have scanf percentage d in the address of I. So we need to declare it as being an integer of I. So we are storing the value, enter the total number of variables in an integer. So we need to declare such that the compiler knows that we are going to use that int I in our program. So we have this. So this is equal to, first assign the first value 0 to it. So we declare and we initialize to 0. So you have this. Now, since you have declared now, you said enter the total number of variables, and the total number of variables is stored in the value I. Now we can create an array. So how do we create an array? So we now go to the next line and then say printf again. Now I'm going to say again printf. So we now say printf, we say enter the variables you wish to calculate its mean. So you have it. Enter the variable you wish to calculate its mean. Now, in order to enter the variables you wish to calculate its mean, I first have to declare in what I want to store the variables, because the person in your user is going to enter some values. Now, when he's going to enter some values, you have to store these values somewhere in your computer, in the memory, in your RAM. So how do you make sure that the computer takes this value and store in the RAM? So in order to do that, you have to go now to a next code above here. You come and declare an array of the total number of terms that you entered into. So come here, you declare an array. The array that you are going to have, you see that the height here are continuous variables and not discrete variables. So the array that I'm going to create is not an integer array, because it's not going to contain only integers but also floating, but instead decimal point numbers. So I'm going to create a floating array. So I'll create here float. Then I say my array will be named as height. It's going to store the value of the height, or in this case, let's say it has everything. I'll just name variable. It stores the value of variable. Now, when you have the variable, I put into square brackets the number of terms it's going to store. You see, initially I asked the user enter the total number of variables, and I have stored the value that is going to enter in. So I can still store it in n. Let's say it's n. So n here is the total number of terms. So I'll store it in n, such that I'll have this my n already. So when he enters it, I have this n already and I have this n. So now let's continue with the code. You see that when he enters, it's going to be stored. Now, when it's stored, it's going to have that value, and then I'll create an array of floating type, because here I want to include all both integers and floating numbers. So let's say I'll enter here now n, so that it has a total number. Then I'll go now to the next line by putting a semicolon at the end. So here is a declaration of the array. So we have here declaration of array. So now, since we have the declaration of the array, we now go to the next part. Printf, enter the value you wish to calculate its mean. Now, we want now the person to enter the value, but we are going to do that with something. We are going to do that with loops. We already know that the total number of terms he's going to enter are going to be 7. In this case, are going to be 7 terms, but in all the cases are going to be n terms. So we are going to create a loop. Let's say the while loop. In the while loop now, we are going to create another thing. When we want to use loops, we always have to use counters, because in loops we are asking the machine to do a multiple number of action within we are asking the machine to do a multiple number of action within few lines. So you need to have counters every time you have loops. So I have to declare its counter here again above. So I will declare the counter. Let's say the declaration of counter is always, the first thing is that the declaration of counter is always an integer type. When you declare the counter, we have, let's see, I'll assign the first value of the counter to 0. Now I come here, I know that the first counter will be at 0. So now I'll come and I say while I is less than n. So while I is less than n, so I'm asking every time, so in this case where height is 7, I'm asking that every time I is less than 7, then do what is inside this loop. So that's what I'm asking to my while loop to do. While I is less than n, every time it's less than 7, I is less than 7, then do this. So what will I do? I'm asking now to the program to store the different values the user is going to enter. So let's see. In order to ask him to store the different values, I'm going to use this same function here, the scanf. So I'll say scanf, open the bracket. So when I use the scanf, I will now store the values of scanf. Now this one, the percentage is so that I have stored this value in an integer type. Now I'm going to use the percentage f to show that I'm storing the value now in a floating type, which is going to be the array variable. So now I put comma, I now store it here in the address of variable. Now I put now here I. Now the question is, why do I put I? I put I such that, let's first continue by saying I equals to I plus 1. Then I put semicolon here. So now you see that here, while I is less than n, you have enter into the loop, you scanf, you put into the percentage f, percentage f, because it's going to enter now into it's going to enter in an array which is of floating type, and then you have the address of variable I. So why do I put I? I'm putting I because I want to change the location of the array. An array is a set of one row and multiple columns. So I'm asking now, you see that at the first term, you say that here int I is equals to 0. So let's say that the height, the total number of terms for the height are 7. So the man is going to enter the 7 into a machine. When he enters 7 into this, it's going to be stored here in N. When it's stored here, you see that I, which is 0, is less than 7. So what happened is that it's going to enter 0 now, is going to enter now into the loop. We are going to enter now the first term. The first term is going to be stored in variable 0. See, the first term is now going to be stored in variable 0, and then we are going to move down, add up the term now, I equals to I plus 1. When I do I equals to I plus 1, I added that variable 0 to 1. Now I will contain the value of 1, then it goes up, but 1 is still less than 7. Continue and do that for 7 times. We are going to see the output when we are going to do the execution of the code. Now here, this loop is used for storing the value of the variables. So this is used for storing the value of variables. This other one here is used for storing the value of the total number of variables. Now the next part of our code now will be involved now with the summation. Now we see that this is a formula of the mean. We have this and we have all the terms of I. Now to calculate the mean, we need to sum all the i's that we have got, we have stored, and we divide it by n. So that's how we are to calculate our mean. So now let's come to our code. You see that. So now the next part we are going to involve with is the summation of all the variables that have been entered because of this formula. So we are going to find this numerator. We are going to sum all the values that have been entered by the user. So how do we sum all the values? You see that if the user enters 100 terms, it's very long to take each 100 term and sum the values. So we are going to still use loops. Now how do we do that? We come and create a while loop first. Now we have to make sure now that, because when you create the while loop and say while I is less than n, realize very well here that in this case, when it's going to come out of the loop, when I is going to come out of the loop, it's going to be 6. It's going to be 7 in this case, because it's going to be, in this case where the height is 7, when it's going to come out, it's going to be 7. So you have to make sure that, and when it's 7 here, it's no more going to enter in this loop. So you have to make sure that when it come out, you initialize again the value of I to 0 such that it start back for this loop. So I'll come back down here and do I equals to 0 in order to initialize again the value, and I enter now in this other loop. So when I do that, I then enter now in this loop. Now I equals 0, and this case 7 is going to enter back in this loop. I want to do the summing. So how do I do the summing? The first thing I'm going to do is that I'm going to create a new variable here, which is going to be of floating type, and it's going to be sum. So I'm going to create a new variable which is going to contain the value of the total number, or the sum. So here now I'm going to put sum, which of the floating type, the machine is recognizing it here, is equals to, so I'm going to say that sum is going to be equals to the value of sum that I've initialized here to be 0 plus the value of the array I say variable, and I put I inside. So I put I, and then I come down, I say I equals to I plus 1. So I have this. So what happened with this loop? When I initialize back the value of 0 here, what happened is that I'll enter now 0 into this way. Let's say that height is still 7 terms as our example. So when you have 0 is less than 7, it's going to enter back into our function, into our function while loop. When it enters now, is going to now take when the value that you have stored at variable I equals to 0 here is going to enter into the value of sum. Then it's going to go down I equals to this. Then it's going to take, now I is going to take down the value of 1. It's going to come up and then take with variable into 1 here, and then place now into the value of sum. So you have all this. So this is going to produce, this loop is going to produce this term in the numerator here. So now when you have this term in the numerator, we are now capable of calculating our mean. So we are going to create another variable again of floating type, which is going to contain the mean. So let's say that we first declare it to 0. So now come back down here. We want to say, so in this new the statement we are going to come down, are going to calculate the mean. So we're going to calculate the mean down here. So now how do we calculate the mean? We already have the total number, the total sum of the value. So we just say that the mean is equals to the value of sum above here. So we write sum and we divide. The division is given by the front slash. So we have this. We divide by n. We see that this was the value which has been stored. We divide by n. N contains the value of the n number of terms which has been stored first. So we divide by n and we go to a semicolon. So now we have this. So inside the machine is going to calculate the sum. It contains the value of sum in the variable sum. Now it contains the value of n in the variable n, and then it contains the value of mean in the variable mean. But the thing is that the machine will not show up this variable to you. So I need to put again another statement to ask the machine to show up the variable to us. So that statement is printf. When I use the printf, I open the bracket, then I have this. Now I'll ask the machine to show the mean. So I'll say the mean of the variables you entered is 2. So now this is the mean. So I'm going to put a percent in order to bring out the values. I'm going to put percentage d here. No, the mean is of floating type. We have created the mean of floating type. We are going to do percentage d, comma. Now we are going to send out the value of mean here. So we put comma and put mean so that we send out the value of mean. And we place our semicolon. So all this will be our code. We want to place it on the center. So we are going to tap it twice so that it's slightly on the center. We are going to try to place, when you want to scan this value, it's going to be on the same line, but when you want to scan enter this is going to be on another line. So we are going to do this. We are going to create, no, let's go back. So we are going to create a new printf such that our code should be very legible, but everything has already been done. I'm just trying now to place such that our code so that the execution should be a little bit much more compatible to our eyes. So now when you have this, you have printf here, you have the mean. Now you say now the values that will be entered will go on the next line. You say variables. So this is backslash and I place n here. So I have here variables, 2 dot, and then you can enter the different values with the space. So when you compile, you have small errors here. This error is shown because we come to the debugging. You see that expected semicolon before I, so you have to place this semicolon. So come and compile, still no error is shown again to you. So then you can come and run. So this is our program. It asks you enter the total number of variables. So what I want to do in this program, I still want that the variable should be of height. Let's say we have variable height. We have the total number of terms are 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7. So we are going to have 7 terms which are going to enter. So enter. So now this is not very clear. I like it to be very clear, so I'm going to shift it and place it a little bit much more at the center here. So this is variable is not very clear to our eyes. So I'm going to first shift this on the next line and then shift variable to this portion here. So how do I do that? I just come to variable I've just created here. I'm going to tap with a T and then I'm going to tap another T. When you compile and run, you see that when I write 7 here and enter, no, the code was not written very well. I wrote an unsigned here. That's why it immediately went with an error. You see that execution time and it went with an error. So what I have to do is that I have to enter 7. So let's enter 7. When I enter 7, enter the variable you wish to calculate. See that the tab have shifted it, but I want to be that the variable should be on one particular line for itself. So when I want the variable to be on one particular line for itself, I'm going to place a \n here. So I compile, I run. You see that when I place 7, I go down, you have this variable line on itself. So now I'm going to enter the different variables that has been said. We have taken the example above here. So we have 1.3. When you want to store the values, you ask the user must store with a space. When you have placed that space, the space now is going to store the first value in the variable with 0 here. So now when I place now 1.5, I store it again with a space. You see that it's continuing to store because of this while loop here. You have this while loop. The while loop we have placed at this side here. Realize that we had a while loop here. let's come back. Realize that we had a while loop here. The while loop is used in order for us to store all the 7 terms we've entered here. So we said that we want to enter 7 terms. So all the 7 terms need to be stored. So I initially was 0. What happened is that it's going to take I0 at first term. The first term will be variable 0 stored as 1.3. Now variable 1 will be stored as 1.5. The next variable will be 1.5. When I store, I place a space. You see that the next variable will be variable 2 with 2 here. So now the next term is 1.5. I store with a space, and please it's required for you to know that when you want in the storing system of an array, it doesn't start with 1 here, but it starts with 0. So you may ask the question, why is that we are already on the 4th term, but here it's storing at 3? It is because it's starting with 0 and not with 1. So that's the 3rd term we have stored. We come back again, we store, this is a 4th term we have stored in. So we store now this 6th term with a space, then the next term with a space, then the next term with a space, and then we put 1.7. We have all this. We come back to our code. And we press enter. So the mean has been calculated to and given to us. The mean of the variable entered is 1.54 days. So this is the mean which has been calculated. Now to calculate the mean, you see that this function here above has been utilized. The function that we used here, summing all the variables, it has summed all the values inside. When it has summed all the values inside, now it has taken now into the value of mean and is stored. So from where we have calculated mean, we have created a small program which has calculated the mean for us. So from here you can say thanks for your kind attention.